Remember that image of a helicopter perched on the roof of a building on fire in Santiago?
Oh, yeah.
That was the presidential palace in Chile,
Right.
engulfed in flames during the 1973 coup.
Yeah.
That toppled Salvador Allende,
Mm-hmm.
a democratically elected socialist president.
Yeah.
Just imagine the shockwaves that rippled through the world when news broke
Mm-hmm.
that a leader promising a better future for his people was overthrown with the covert backing of a foreign power.
Yeah.
We're not talking about some Cold War thriller here,
No.
but a real historical event that continues to spark debate and controversy even 50 years later.
Absolutely.
Today, we're diving deep into the events leading up to the Chilean coup,
Right.
using excerpts from the Rest is History podcast to guide our exploration.
Okay, great.
So, to really understand this story,
Yeah.
we need to start with Chile itself.
Okay.
It's a country unlike any other.
All right. Absolutely.
This incredibly long, thin strip of land running down the western edge of South America.
It's really striking, isn't it? The geography there. I mean, it shaped their history in such profound ways.
Yeah.
You know, gaining independence from Spain in 1821.
Mm.
And unlike a lot of its neighbors, it managed to establish a relatively stable democratic system.
Yeah.
And by the late 19th century, Chile had become quite wealthy through its copper exports,
Yeah.
setting it apart from other Latin American nations that were grappling with poverty and political instability at the time.
Yeah, and then there's this fascinating detail about the Chilean military.
Oh, yeah?
You were initially trained by Prussians,
Right.
which seems like it could have played a significant role in the events that unfolded.
You're spot on. I
Yeah.
mean, this Prussian influence instilled a deep sense of discipline
Yeah.
and loyalty to the state in the Chilean military.
Mhm.
They saw themselves as guardians of the Constitution,
Yeah.
a force that remained largely separate from the political sphere.
Okay.
And this is absolutely crucial to understanding why the military intervened in 1973.
Right.
They believed that they were acting to save Chile from chaos and communism,
Yeah.
not to overthrow democracy.
At the heart of this story is Salvador Allende,
But
a truly captivating figure.
a fascinating guy.
Born in 1908 to an upper-middle-class family, he embraced socialist ideals from an early age.
Right?
This guy was a doctor, an athlete, even a Freemason.
Yeah.
It's like something out of a novel.
A complex character,
Yeah.
very charismatic,
Right.
deeply committed to social justice. I mean, he served as Minister of Health and later as a senator,
Mm-hmm.
playing a key role in establishing Chile's National Health Service in the 1950s.
Wow.
A remarkable achievement.
Yeah.
I mean, it provided health care to millions of people.
He was undeniably a popular figure,
Yeah.
running for president 3 times
Mm-hmm.
in 52, 58, and 64,
Right?
before finally winning in 1970.
Uh-huh.
What's fascinating is that his growing popularity,
Yeah.
particularly his Marxist ideology,
Uh-huh.
sent shockwaves through the United States.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, this was the peak of the Cold War,
Right.
and the U.S. was determined to contain the spread of communism,
Mm-hmm.
especially within its perceived sphere of influence.
Of course.
Allende's victory in Chile was seen as a direct threat to U.S. interests in the region.
It really shook things up.
This is where the story takes a truly intriguing turn.
Yeah.
The U.S. actively intervened in the 1964 Chilean election
Wow.
to prevent Allende from winning.
Really?
Yeah, it's like something out of a spy thriller, isn't it?
It really is.
So under the Kennedy and then Johnson administrations,
Uh-huh.
millions of dollars were secretly funneled
Okay.
to support Eduardo Frei Montalva,
Yeah.
a center-right Christian Democrat candidate.
Uh-huh.
They saw him as a bulwark against Allende's socialism.
I see.
And there was even a massive propaganda campaign orchestrated by the CIA
Wow.
aimed at discrediting Allende and swaying public opinion.
So they were really pulling out all the stops.
It's incredible how blatant this interference was.
Yeah.
But it worked,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it did. Frey won that election.
Right,
Keeping Allende out of power, at least for a while.
for a while.
But this episode really reveals the extent of U.S. Cold War anxieties
Yeah.
and their willingness to manipulate foreign elections to achieve their objectives.
It's important to remember, though,
Oh, absolutely.
that U.S. influence wasn't the only factor in Frey's victory.
Right.
I mean, Chilean voters had their own reasons
Of course.
for choosing him over Allende at that time.
Absolutely.
Fast forward to 1970, and Allende is back on the ballot.
Okay.
This time, he secures a narrow victory with 36% of the vote.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't a landslide,
No.
but it was enough to require congressional confirmation.
Right.
And Nixon and Kissinger,
Yeah.
who were now in charge in Washington, they were not about to let Allende simply slip into the presidency.
No.
They actively discussed various strategies
Oh, wow.
to prevent him from taking office,
Like what?
including bribery and even inciting a coup. Wait a minute, are there actual records of them discussing these plans?
Oh, yeah.
It sounds almost too incredible to be true.
I know.
Declassified documents reveal some shocking quotes from Nixon and Kissinger, revealing their intentions and disdain for the Chilean electorate's choice.
Rude.
Kissinger, for example, famously said,
Yeah.
"I don't see why we need to stand by and watch a country go communist due to the irresponsibility of its people."
Wow, that's astonishing.
So what steps did they take to prevent Allende from assuming the presidency?
Well, one of their primary targets was General René Schneider,
Okay.
the head of the Chilean military. Schneider was firmly committed to democratic principles
Yeah.
and was seen as the main obstacle to a military takeover.
Yeah.
He represented stability and a commitment to constitutional order.
So are you suggesting they were willing to eliminate him to pave the way for a coup?
Well, the CIA did back several attempts to kidnap and neutralize Schneider, hoping this would create chaos and pave the way for a coup.
That's chilling.
Tragically, one of these attempts went horribly wrong.
Oh no, they killed him.
Yes, during a botched kidnapping attempt in October 1970.
Wow.
General Schneider was shot and killed.
Oh, wow.
The public outcry was immense,
Yeah.
and the incident backfired on the U.S. and the Chilean opposition.
Okay.
However, despite these attempts to thwart his rise to power, Allende ultimately secured the presidency by striking a deal with the Chilean Congress.
Okay.
He pledged to uphold the Constitution,
Right.
assuring them he wouldn't dismantle Chilean democracy.
So even with the U.S. actively working against him,
Yeah.
Allende finally achieved his lifelong goal of becoming president.
It's remarkable, a testament to his perseverance and the power of democratic ideals.
What happened next?
Did he immediately begin implementing his socialist agenda?
He did.
Okay.
In his first 100 days, Allende launched a whirlwind of reforms,
Yeah.
nationalizing industries, redistributing land, introducing free milk for children.
Expanding social programs, and even making significant investments in arts and culture.
It was a bold and ambitious agenda.
It really was.
I must have felt like a revolution was underway.
It did.
Yeah.
Allende was determined to make a rapid and significant impact, but he faced significant challenges right from the start.
Like what?
Well, the global economy was experiencing a downturn,
Oh, okay.
and copper prices, which were crucial for Chile's revenue,
Yeah.
were plummeting.
And I imagine the U.S. wasn't exactly standing idly by.
No, not at all.
Right.
They responded to Allende's election with a carefully calculated campaign of economic sabotage.
Really?
They cut off loans,
Wow.
pressured private investors,
Right.
and even blocked essential parts needed for Chilean industries.
Really?
They were determined to make the Chilean economy scream, as Nixon infamously put it.
So even though Allende won the election fair and square,
Yeah,
he was facing a hostile international environment
absolutely.
and a deliberate campaign to destabilize his government.
That's right.
That must have made governing incredibly difficult.
It did.
Yeah.
And it laid the groundwork for the growing opposition and unrest that would eventually lead to the coup.
Right.
So as you can imagine, the combination of Allende's sweeping reforms, the global economic downturn, and the U.S. economic pressure created a pretty volatile situation in Chile.
Right.
Inflation skyrocketed, eroding the savings of the middle class,
Yeah.
and fueling widespread fears of a Cubanization of Chile.
So people started to worry that Allende was going to turn Chile into a communist state like Cuba.
Right, that was the narrative.
It's amazing how powerful that fear was during the Cold War.
Oh, absolutely. That was the narrative being relentlessly pushed by Allende's opponents.
Yeah.
And the U.S. was certainly fanning the flames.
Right.
Allende's friendly relations with Cuba and his acceptance of Soviet aid only heightened these anxieties.
So even though Allende was trying to implement his socialist policies through democratic means,
Yeah.
there were powerful forces actively working to undermine him and create an atmosphere of fear and instability.
That's right.
It's a classic case of Cold War paranoia and interventionism.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the CIA was deeply involved in these efforts.
Right.
They poured millions of dollars into opposition groups,
Right.
including newspapers like El Mercurio, which we touched upon earlier, and various right-wing business organizations.
They were determined to make Allende's government fail.
They were.
El Mercurio, that was the fiercely conservative newspaper that the U.S. was secretly funding, right?
Yes, that's the one.
The one that consistently demonized Allende and his policies.
Right. They played a pivotal role in shaping public opinion,
Yeah.
pushing a pro-coup narrative.
They relentlessly criticized Allende's policies, portraying him as a dangerous communist.
Right, and fueling fears of economic collapse
Right.
and social unrest.
It sounds like a textbook example of a propaganda campaign,
It really is.
using the media to manipulate public perception
Yes.
and create a climate conducive to a coup. It makes you wonder how much of what people believed was actually true.
That's a crucial point. Propaganda thrives on fear and uncertainty.
Yeah.
By 1973, Chilean society was deeply polarized.
Right.
The political climate was incredibly tense.
It was a powder keg waiting to explode.
It really was.
So with all of this happening around him, Allende must have been walking a tightrope.
He was?
Did he try to crack down on the opposition or control the media?
Surprisingly, no.
Really?
Allende remained steadfastly committed to democratic principles
Okay.
and freedom of the press.
He didn't shut down El Mercurio or other opposition outlets,
He didn't.
even though they were actively calling for his overthrow.
Even though they were.
It's remarkable.
It is, isn't it?
Almost naive in hindsight, knowing how determined his opponents were to remove him from power.
Yeah, it's as if he believed in the inherent goodness of democracy,
Right.
even as it was crumbling around him.
It's a testament to his unwavering idealism.
It really is.
Allende was a man of principle, and he was willing to uphold those principles,
It was.
even when they put him at a disadvantage.
Absolutely.
It's both admirable and tragic.
It really is.
So with the economy in a tailspin and the opposition gaining strength every day,
Yeah.
what was Allende's next move?
Well, in March 1973, there were congressional elections.
So?
The opposition, with the backing of the U.S.,
Yeah,
was hoping to gain a two-thirds majority,
right.
which would allow them to impeach Allende and remove him from office constitutionally.
So they were still trying to get rid of him through legal means?
Yes.
At least on the surface?
Yes, but their patience was wearing thin.
Okay.
The U.S. was growing increasingly frustrated with what they called the parliamentary option.
Right.
They were ready to resort to more drastic measures if necessary.
What were the results of the election?
Well,
Did the opposition get their two-thirds majority?
to everyone's surprise,
Yeah.
Allende's coalition actually gained seats in the election, thwarting the opposition's plans and further frustrating the U.S.
So even with all the pressure and propaganda,
right.
Allende was still able to maintain the support of the people.
He was.
It shows the resilience of democracy, even under extraordinary duress.
It does.
Yeah.
This victory, while significant,
Yeah.
also marked a turning point.
Okay.
It became clear to the opposition
Mm-hmm.
and to the U.S. that removing Allende through democratic means was no longer a realistic option.
The tension must have been palpable at this point.
It was.
The congressional elections backfired.
Right.
Allende is still in power.
Mm-hmm.
But the U.S. and the Chilean opposition are now more determined than ever to get rid of him.
Absolutely.
It feels like a pressure cooker about to explode.
Exactly. The failure of the parliamentary option only strengthened their resolve to pursue a military coup as the only remaining solution. The wheels were in motion for a tragic confrontation that would change the course of Chilean history.
Yeah, it's a chilling thought, isn't it? That even in a country with a strong democratic tradition like Chile, things could unravel so quickly. But it really underscores a point we've been circling around.
Yeah.
The military's unique position in Chilean society.
Right. We talked earlier about their Prussian training.
Right.
Their sense of duty as guardians of the state.
Exactly.
So it wasn't just about following orders.
Right.
It was about this deeply ingrained belief that they had to step in when the politicians, in their view, were failing the nation.
Exactly. And Pinochet very skillfully exploited that sentiment.
Okay.
He framed the coup as a patriotic act.
Yeah.
A necessary evil to save Chile from descending into chaos and communism.
Right.
He played on existing fears and anxieties, effectively turning the military into an instrument of his own ambition.
And what about the Chilean people? How did they react? There must have been widespread resistance. But the regime was swift and ruthless in crushing any opposition. They imposed strict censorship.
Wow.
shut down newspapers and radio stations, and arrested anyone suspected of being a dissident.
It's hard to imagine the fear and uncertainty that must have gripped the country.
Absolutely. It was like the lifeblood of democracy was being drained away. It was
Yeah.
a dark period. People were afraid to speak out, afraid to trust their neighbors, even to think freely.
Oh.
The trauma of those years continues to cast a long shadow over Chile.
And all this while, the U.S., the self-proclaimed champion of freedom and democracy, was standing by essentially condoning these atrocities.
It is a painful truth to confront. The U.S. saw Pinochet as a bulwark against communism in the region. They turned a blind eye to his human rights abuses,
Yeah.
providing economic and military aid to his regime.
It's a stark example of how Cold War ideology could trump democratic values.
It really is.
It's a chilling reminder that the fight for democracy is often fraught with complexities and contradictions. Sometimes the lines between good and evil are blurred,
Yeah.
and those who claim to be on the side of freedom can be complicit in oppression.
Precisely. And it underscores the importance of holding those in power accountable.
Mm.
Regardless of their political ideology, we
Right.
must constantly question narratives, challenge assumptions,
Yeah.
and be vigilant in defending democratic values.
Allende's story, while tragic, also offers a glimmer of hope.
It does.
It reminds us of the enduring power of ideals, the courage of those who stand up for what they believe in, even in the face of overwhelming odds. His legacy continues to inspire people around the world who are fighting for social justice and a more equitable world.
It's true. His story serves as a powerful reminder that the struggle for democracy is an ongoing process.
Right.
One that requires constant vigilance and a willingness to defend our freedoms. It's a fight we must all be willing to engage in.
We've explored a lot of challenging material today, but I think it's important to remember that understanding history, even its darkest chapters, can help us make better choices in the present. It's about learning from the mistakes of the past and working to create a more just and equitable future for all.
I couldn't agree more. By understanding how events like the Chilean coup unfolded, by recognizing the forces at play and the choices that were made,
Right.
we can better equip ourselves to protect and strengthen democratic institutions in our own time.
That's a powerful message to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of the most tumultuous periods in Chilean history.
It was my pleasure.
We hope this conversation has given you a deeper understanding of the events that led to the coup, its lasting impact on Chile, and the broader implications for democracy in the face of Cold War rivalries.
I hope so too. And as you continue to learn about this period, I encourage you to think critically about the information you encounter, to consider multiple perspectives, and to ask yourself what lessons we can draw from the past to shape a better future.
That's all for today's Deep Dive. Subscribe to the Deep Dive for more insightful explorations into history's most captivating moments.
Okay.
And as always, share this episode with anyone interested in understanding the forces that have shaped our world.